Meanwhile, on the economic side of this, the White House announced yesterday it is pitching a $1 trillion economic package to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak, $250 billion of which would be used for direct payments to Americans. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin announced the effort after speaking with Senate Republicans. In that closed-door GOP Senate lunch, Secretary Mnuchin warned that if Congress does not act to pass the stimulus package, the unemployment rate could skyrocket to as high as 20%. The White House said if Congress acts quickly, checks could go out to Americans directly by late April, though that rapid timing still could leave millions of workers scrambling, of course, to make rent and other payments due at the beginning of the month. It's unclear exactly who would be eligible at this point for those payments. Let's bring in NBC News senior business correspondent, MSNBC anchor Stephanie Ruhle. Steph, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So you have Steve Mnuchin talking about the potential for 20% unemployment. We have this idea of direct payments, something the president said he would be open to. Let's get the money to the people quickly. And then there's this much larger idea of bailing out entire industries as they suffer through this.
That's what we heard from the president and Steve Mnuchin yesterday, saying whether you're a company or an individual, this wasn't your fault. We're here to backstop you. Now, where we're going to see a whole lot of pushback is those corporate bailouts. Remember when it happened in 2008? What it didn't do when banks or auto companies were bailed out, it didn't trickle down to workers. If you think about one of the biggest shareholders of the airline industry, it's Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett. So if there are going to be any sort of bailouts, we need to take a closer look at should there be strings attached, corporate buybacks. The airline industry spent 96% of their free cash flow. That means the money they could have as a cushion on buybacks. Buyback is when the company buys their share backs. That's great for the executives, for the shareholders. It boosts things up. So unless you are going to have some sort of bailout where all employees can benefit, or if it's for the hotel industry, where just yesterday Marriott furloughed tens of thousands of workers. If you are going to bail these industries out, will there be some strings attached where we know workers aren't going to lose their jobs, or those who stay are going to get compensated in the same way that the executives will?
We've heard some prominent rich people, to use a term, speak out against corporate buybacks. Mark Cuban comes to mind yesterday. He was out front and center saying, hey, wait a minute, if we're going to do these bailouts, and maybe it's the right thing to do, we have to put in a condition that says you cannot do stock buybacks. This has to go to the workers. The entire point of this isn't to get your cruise ships back and running to make the executives rich. It's to protect all those workers who work on the cruise ships.
It can't just be financial engineering, but cruise ships are the perfect example. They pay almost no corporate tax. Royal Caribbean, they're domiciled in Liberia. Norwegian cruise, we got Liberia, Panama, Bermuda. These companies aren't even paying huge amounts of corporate tax like most U.S. companies are. So this cannot be another exercise in financial engineering. It is the people down the line who are suffering the most. Just yesterday, restaurant CEOs were meeting with President Trump. He was talking about it in his press conference. You didn't see any independent restaurants. Steve Mnuchin was saying, well, maybe we're going to have drive-thrus. Maybe we're going to use the apps. Do you know any mom and pop restaurants that have a drive-thru or an app? I'm pretty sure Joe knows of a fish house in the Panhandle that can't do that. So if we're going to talk about individual businesses and people, you have to actually help them. Just a corporate bailout, that's not going to serve what it's actually intended to do.
Well, Stephanie, as you know, it is those independent owners, it is those small businesses that maybe they have a month's reserve in cash to carry them over. They're the ones who are going to need help the most. And immediately, I had somebody call me yesterday from the industry saying, well, the airline industry, this was early in the morning. You understand the airline industry that's going to get bailed out. They get tens of billions of dollars from the Trump tax cuts. And they spent the overwhelming majority of the money went right back into stock buybacks. It wasn't to help their workers. It wasn't to expand their businesses. It wasn't all the things we heard. So they've already got this massive multi-billion-dollar bailout, which they all used to help themselves and buy back stock. And here we are a year later, and they're going, I understand. I need the airlines to be operating, too. But it's absolutely ridiculous that these people that got this multi-billion-dollar windfall before and didn't help workers at all are now in line to get another $50 billion or so.
Joe, we also have to take a close look at what businesses we need. We obviously don't want to see millions of Americans lose their jobs, but the airline industry, one could say this is an essential industry for us. But are other businesses in travel and leisure and cruises, do we need these businesses? If we don't need them, do they deserve a corporate bailout? Or should the government be looking at all of those Americans, how we can support them? You're going to see millions of people in the retail industry possibly suffer, and that's a really bad thing. But we knew before this happened that the American mall was dying. So should the government step in and help these big retailers when maybe the future is they shouldn't exist in the same form that they are right now?
Well, and the cruise lines, which of course avoid U.S. taxes, as you were saying before. Let me ask you a question about testing. Jeffrey Goldberg was talking about how we don't like getting pharmaceuticals. We don't like getting certain medical devices from overseas. I wanted to ask you about testing, and can you explain why our government had an opportunity to get World Health Organization tests and passed on it? Can you explain why? And they just had somebody in a government that is working in D.C. just text me and said it takes 6 to 7 days in Washington, D.C. to get testing. In other parts of the world, it takes 1 to 2 days. And this is an embarrassment even for people in the White House. What business obstacles are there from us getting World Health Organization tests or getting other tests from across the globe?
It's about will. The fact that we've chosen not to do this is what makes no sense. Just last night, Tom Frieden, the former head of the CDC, was on MSNBC talking about because we haven't had enough widespread testing, that's why we are now at this place where we have city after city, possibly state, facing lockdowns. If we had had that testing, which we chose not to, when the World Health Organization said we're ready to send these tests to 50 countries and the United States says no thanks, we're going to look back in history from a crisis and risk management standpoint, because that is what the top levels of federal government do. They risk manage. And we're going to say, why on earth did this happen? You know, we could joke and say, look at all the things the president has said over the last 6 weeks and find how his stories don't line up. But that's history. Now we have to say, what are we actually doing? And if where we are is shutdowns across the board, Joe, that is going to be economically crippling. And we need to figure out from the bottom up, not the top down, how we're going to help the most amount of people.
Steph, speaking of the bottom up.
And Willie, I'm sorry, the reason we're shutting down, Willie, is because we don't have the testing.
That's right.
We don't know who's sick. We don't know who's not sick. So if the White House says, let's move on from the testing, or we are not going to give you clear answers on the testing, you have governors, you have senators, you have mayors who are making decisions to shut down their cities and cripple their economies because the administration still is not delivering testing.
Yeah, the tests are the bottom line and have been, by the way, from the beginning. If you don't know how many people have this, you don't know how to manage it. So what you're seeing now is preventative. It's containment. Shut down a city just in case everyone has it. You have to assume, as we heard last night, that you are carrying this infection. It's outrageous, and it's a scandal that we can look into over the course of history. But I want to ask you about that bottom-up question, which is the $1,000 payments to every American that the president appeared to support yesterday. Get one of those out the door, cover your rent this month. What we know, though, Steph, is that this could go on for months and months and months and months. So what do you do after that first $1,000 check, which obviously is helpful to so many people?
So that's the same issue we hear over and over in the last week when people say, why don't they shut the stock market down? Why don't we create a national holiday? I get that. We did that after September 11th, but after September 11th, when they closed the markets, that was a technical issue. We knew that tons of necessary equipment was damaged, and they could say, here's a finite amount of time we need to get things secure, and we'll be okay. This, as much as the president wants to say, this is going to be like a V. We're going to face this health crisis, and then we're going to pop right back up. That's not the case. We don't know how long it's going to last. And there's one other thing to think about with regard to the recession we're sliding into. People could end up changing their behavior. Let's say you and I every Friday night love to go to the movies, love to go to our favorite restaurant. If we can't do that for 3 months, by the end of that 3 months, you may have become a great cook, and I may now love Netflix. It doesn't mean we're going to snap back into that old lifestyle. So to say we're going to come right back, We're not necessarily. So those $1,000 checks could turn into a whole lot more money pretty quickly.
Yeah, they might get you through this month, but there's a long road ahead of us. Stephanie Ruhle, great insights as always. Thanks, Steph. Mika?
All right, coming up on Morning Joe, we're breaking through partisan politics to get a full picture of the coronavirus outbreak. 2 governors, one Democrat, one Republican, join our conversation. Michigan's Gretchen Whitmer and Maryland's Larry Hogan, plus 2 former cabinet secretaries one under Barack Obama and the other under Donald Trump. On Homeland Security, Jay Johnson from the Veteran Affairs Department, David Shulkin. Morning Joe is back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.